Welcome back to another episode of the Castus Nidasterius. In this episode, I'm going to be putting together because I have two, I am going to be putting together the left melee gauntlet, the Imperial Knight melee gauntlet, and the Imperial Knight breach shield, which this is the plain version. And both of these, the melee gauntlet and the breach shield, are both from Tarot Model Maker. I'll put a link in the description. And I also found a Tarot Model Maker on Etsy. I believe there's also a standalone website. I will check, and like I said, put links in the description. So the idea in this one is basically the melee gauntlet for the left arm, right? So here's the arm pieces that I 3D printed. So the middle of the forearm essentially will be magnetized using, for that one, and the shoulder joint, I'm going to be using two D61. They are 3/8 by 1/16 inch magnets, and the strengths are N52. So I'm going to use that going into the shoulder, as well as the connection in the forearm. So I'll need 3 of them there. And then for the hand, because this basically goes into the back of the shield there, gets a magnet inside of it. This piece goes on to the back of the hand shielding after the hand gets put together. And both of those I will use 3/8 by 1/16 also, but these are N42s, so they're a little bit weaker. But for just holding the shield, it'll be plenty. Should even allow the shield to rotate without a problem. So, and all the magnets I buy are always from K&J Magnetics. They're just like really inexpensive, and they ship really quickly. And I found, and recently a couple of them didn't, but they usually come all in their own individual bags like this. And then I just have a bunch of screws sticking into the front of my workbench to magnetize them too. So it's a nice way to organize them. But the most recent batch didn't all have their own bags, hence the handwritten bag, which isn't such a big deal, but it is nice when they have the stickers on them. So, that said, I'm basically just going to get going on this, and there'll be some little pauses here and there, and I'm going to do, I think, more editing than I have in the past, and really go in and try to be brutal about cutting out pretty much everything that feels unnecessary, and get these down even shorter. So I guess let me know in the comments, should I keep everything in, or should I essentially cut it down to like the essentials? So I don't know, sometimes it's nice to have a long video, sometimes it's nice to have a shorter one. You let me know what you prefer, and I will attempt, like I said, in this one, I'm going to edit out pretty much everything that seems unessential. So this one hopefully will be a relatively short video compared to others. And I know I've mentioned in another video previously that the plain version of this breach shield was purchased because it will get an Iron Warriors themed custom paint job. There's going to be a big cool skull in the center with all kinds of piping and hazard stripes, of course. So it's going to be very cool. So that one's going to be coming up in a future episode. So that all said, I'll be getting to building the hand in a closed fist position for this one, because it's going to be pretty much the only thing it's going to be used for is the gauntlet, or the breach shield. So it won't have any other purpose. And if the end user client wants to have the breach shield off, then the hand will just be in a closed fist. So, all right, I am going to get to it, and hopefully this one goes really smoothly. All right, so now that all the glue is set up, or all the magnets and have all set up, I basically just need to glue this onto here. Those two just lock together for me. So I'm just going to glue that on. So let that sit for a second. I can see how the forearm came together. Right, that actually works very nicely. It's a good solid connection. Right, so that piece goes up into the shoulder joint. Right, so that's a nice connection there. And then the hand will get glued to the end of the wrist once I kind of figure out the angle, and I think it's going to be somewhat kind of up at the wrist, a little bent. So that once the shield's on, we'll have some adjustability. And the larger bone, I guess, would be on the radius side, or it's the radius rather than the ulna. The radius is on the thumb side, so that should go up toward the thumb. And then once that's all set, we'll be able to rotate that. So we'll be able to rotate the hand forward and backward, as well as being able to rotate out at the shoulder. Now, we don't get to rotate at the elbow, but then the shield will also be able to rotate left and right. I don't want to put it on there right now because that glue's not dry, but it will rotate side to side. So there should be plenty of room to manipulate and move that around. And the next part, and I know I had talked previously about doing a custom paint job on this, and that is still going to be part, but in addition to the paint job, I have gone ahead in 3ds Max and actually sculpted this up partially. The skull is a download from Thingiverse, and I will put a link to the original creator of that. I don't know if it's a scan file or if it's a sculpt, but either way, it was free and it's a really nice skull. So I cut it off and squished it down so it would fit as basically a bas relief on the front of the shield. And then I just added all the extra pipes. Now, I showed this to the client. The client loves the idea. So I'm going to go ahead and actually add a little bit more. This as a test print turned out great. I'm going to take a lot of the tubes and pipes and kind of turn them down into the face of the shield, so that I have kind of a place for them to go rather than just kind of ending in space. So that'll actually help. And I'm also going to build a lens into the eye that will then be backlit. So lots more fun stuff. So I will be jumping into 3ds Max to make some adjustments to this existing piece. And I apologize that I didn't record the whole thing of the original creation, but I was just kind of winging it and like throwing some ideas around, and didn't think to record any of it. So the fact that it actually turned out to be something I want to use is great. And I'll record the rest where I'm making some adjustments and modifications to what I already have. All right, so this is not going to get used. The rest of the arm turned out really well. I love how solid that is. It's actually a nice connection. Once that's set up, that'll actually be, it's pretty set up, to the back of the shield like that, so that as he's holding it, right, it'll be able to be rotated. And I'm not sure exactly how we're going to deal with all of the power and the wiring coming off of this, but once I figure that out, the power will have to be coming through here, and it will be coming out around here somewhere. And maybe I'll be able to way to tie it into coming out of the side of one of these areas, to actually make it look like it belongs there, so that I can then run a plug and connection to the main body, and then I will have powered LEDs in the shield as well. All right, so that's it for that. I'll jump into 3ds Max. I'll be right back. All right, so the last little thing to do to get this basically set is to attach the forearm to the wrist right around there. Again, I want to keep the wider bone toward the thumb side. It locks in there pretty good. So that, once that sets, really shouldn't take too long. That's locked in there really nicely. All right, so then there, and then the shield. And it's not quite enough for the forearm to hold that out. All right, so what I'm going to attempt to do, and we'll see if it works, I'm going to try scuffing up these magnets with the file and actually putting in maybe a bit of kind of a heavy cross pattern into them. And then, that's the one I was afraid of. That one should then allow that to have enough friction that'll hold. So that's what I'm going to try to do, and I'll be back to let you know if it worked. All right, so it is by no means perfect, but I scuffed both of those up quite a bit. I think they need a little bit more, but with just that, the arm is able to hold the shield out without it just spinning away freely. So I think I might need to kind of like groove it in a bit more, but that worked. So at this point, that's a relatively finished piece that is fully magnetized and should actually hold itself out away from the body quite well. Maybe not perfect, but we'll get there, right? Maybe a little bit more scuffing, and that boy will be all done. And then shortly, I will be moving on to the finished version of this. Once it finishes printing, we'll get that attached, and then the shield piece will be ready for paint. All right, so this is what we have in 3ds Max. I'm gonna take this just standard. Let's actually maybe go, that's fine. And so this is just a stand-in object to give me kind of an idea of where the shield should be. The overall measurements are based on the shield itself. I don't know for sure if this angle is quite correct, but it's close enough. So what I need to do now is build a lens for in this eye and some kind of simple way for these to end in a much more logical way than just having them kind of run off the edge and trying to figure out a way to do it physically. So that said, I'm going to actually just start with the lens, I think. And then go from there. And it really should end up being basically a cylinder, because I'll have a glass, an 8mm glass lens to actually put in it to be in front of the LED. So that should actually be pretty straightforward. As long as I get my measurements right, it should all be good. So, that said, I'm gonna get to it. I have found in my limited time in printing on a resin printer that when things aren't supported like heavily enough, the supports may print fine, and the object itself may actually pull off the supports as it's kind of detaching from the build plate, or not the build plate, but the separator, the PET or whatever it's called. So I, at this point, am probably putting on a little more supports than necessary, and now all these red lines are what it finds as islands. So as I move through, right, it should highlight in red what it feels to be an island. So there's a little teeny tiny thing right there that I'm probably not going to care about. One right there. Yeah, those could probably use a couple supports, so we'll go back and add those little guys. As I move up through, it doesn't look like any of these others have any issues. So we'll go back and slice it again. There's definitely other problems. Those should be fixed now, though. Okay, so after talking to my client, my good friend Mike, he loved the idea of doing something like this as a physical piece on the shield rather than just doing the painted version. He also liked the idea of illuminating one of the eyes. So we made some updates, and I put ends, as you saw in the other part of the video just a minute ago, ends on all of those, and put this in here so that I would be able to put a nice red chip LED, also again from Evan Designs, that will be in the back of that. And I just had to kind of figure out where to drill through, but it should work really well to bring power out of this kind of knuckle back here, to be able to run to the body. So beyond that, I also did actually go ahead and order some new magnets to replace this little teeny thing here, because that can't actually hold the arm forward back right on the side of the body with the shield on it. So actually this whole end actually will get cut off. Most of it will get cut off and replaced with one giant magnet, and there will be a matching one inside the body to make that actually hold far, far better. Same with this. I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to dig that out, but that will be dug out. And this will also be cut off and replaced with stronger magnets to keep it from doing that, right? So it's got to be strong enough so that it can hold it at any angle, even with this heavy shield on it. So the new magnets, I believe, are rated for 7 to 10 pounds. This stuff is still far, far, far less than that. It just comes down to the fact that these two magnets, they must not quite be touching. I think that's part of it. It's a nice solid lock. They're not going to pull apart this way, but it doesn't have enough force to hold it from rotating. So, okay, that said, that's going to all happen in the future. For now, I'm just really going to go ahead and get the skull attached. And I'm going to try. I've never used heat to adjust resin before. So, because the angle of these pipes don't quite touch the surface, rather than just, I'm going to start just by super gluing the main part of the skull down. And then I'm going to try to heat these up with my heat gun and see if I can get those to lay down onto the surface a little bit better. All right, and then depending, I may be able to get this little connector piece here to touch. If not, I'll just build a connection with some epoxy sculpt later. but I'll get this centered really closely. I want the eye to be pretty close to like vertical center, so that I can get to this piece, although I guess that's not vertical center. I guess I just want those two to line up this way is really what I want. So I'll figure that out. I'll get this glued down, but first of all, I'm just going to actually figure out and mark off where that vertical point is, so that when I go to glue it down, I have a better visual reference rather than just trying to line up on the side. All right, so here we'll just, assuming that's the center. Now, I can easily see whether or not that lines up across there. And then I can also see, based on that, and I'll have a little bit of play, I can come down just a little and get that connection really close. So I will have to heat any of that really minimally. And I'll still be able to drill a hole and get the LED in there without any potential problems. So I like where all that lines up. I like where most of that lines up. All right. Now, while I'm doing this, I just want to say I've read a little bit, and I've been doing a little bit of research on 3D printing since I'm pretty new to it. And I see and have purchased a couple pieces that have been pretty brittle. And I think some people have been talking about how the resin can actually be pretty brittle. I think, though, that at least minimally has something to do with curing time. So, as I've just started with this, I've tried experimenting a little bit on slightly minimizing how long I cure the resin for. I'm trying to do it in like 2-minute batches. So this was cured in 2.5-minute batches, to kind of be able to flip it over and turn it around and make sure that my little turntable in there is actually hitting it from all sides. And then I dropped this piece the other day, and it didn't drop far, but the superglue connection at the tail snapped, but the tail itself didn't break. And as you can see, I don't know if you can actually tell, there is flex to it. So, and I don't know. I mean, it's a pretty solid piece. I tried to hollow this one and rinse it out, but I cured it pretty well, and it hasn't split or anything. People were also talking about how if resin isn't cured properly, it can split. So this one, it wasn't dried all the way. I didn't know that you should dry it all the way. So I went ahead and cured it, and I think there were some wet spots, but it cured fine. So I don't know. I'm still experimenting with all of this. Excuse me. But I think if you just shorten your curing times a little, you might get slightly more flexible resin that has a little bit of give. So it's not going to snap instantly if it's dropped. But it's still actually fully cured. It still sands, everything works. So, all right, that said, I'm going to try to heat up these bits just a little. I just want to bend this down just a little. And these all seem like they're lined up so close that I probably can just super glue them without worrying. So let's just try a little. Oh yeah. Oh, that really does get soft. Alright, with that in mind, let's put a little super glue under there. It's still warm. I'm just trying to think where the best spot's going to be. I can make it look more like one of these and replace that little knuckle there, or I can go more through kind of the bezel itself right above that point. I think that's the better spot. And I'll have a little more room to make any repairs necessary. So we're going to go in at a little bit of an angle to try to get out the eye. Well, that was lucky. It's right almost in the center. So, I mean, it's what I was shooting for, but really didn't expect it to be quite that nice. So, that will make the LED quite easy to set up. All right, so all of that is done and ready and set. The inside of that's going to have to be painted white before I can actually wire the LED to be able to get a nice, vibrant interior. And then there will be a lens. I have ordered essentially dragon eye doll eyes. They're essentially little stickers on the back of glass lenses. I am hopeful that the LED will be bright enough to really shine through, because there's a couple of them in the package of 100 that I had to order that I think could look very cool. And if it doesn't work, I'm essentially just going to scrape the paint off the back and paint it with a very thin layer of probably red to enhance the red of the LED. Other than that, until I can get the new magnets and everything else, the left arm is finished. And next, I will be getting the right melee gauntlet with the Warhammer all built and set up. All right, so that's coming up in the next one. Thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe. Thanks.